The year 1799, the Rosetta Stone is found. During Napoleon Bonaparte's Egyptian campaign, a French soldier discovered a black basalt slab inscribed with ancient writing near the town of Rosetta.
When the Rosetta Stone was discovered in 1799, it was hailed as the ultimate key to unlocking ancient Egypt's secrets. For centuries, scholars believed it contained nothing more than a royal decree.
I'm in the British Museum, and over here is the Rosetta Stone. It was the key to understanding Egyptian hieroglyphics, and it is one of the most precious and valuable treasures of the British Museum.
But now, artificial intelligence has revisited the text with chilling results. Hidden meanings, overlooked symbols, and cryptic warnings have surfaced. Messages that seem less like dusty relics and more like prophecy. What AI uncovered isn't just history, it's something terrifying. The Rosetta Stone, a gateway to the past. The story of the Rosetta Stone begins in 1799, during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt. French soldiers digging near the town of Rosetta, modern-day Rashid, stumbled across a dark slab of granodiorite covered in strange carvings. At first glance, it looked like just another artifact. But this one was different. It carried the same message written in 3 scripts: hieroglyphic, demotic, and ancient Greek. That unique combination was what made it priceless. For the first time, scholars had a decoder ring for Egypt's mysterious writing system. Before this discovery, Egyptian hieroglyphics were considered an enigma. The symbols looked majestic and decorative, but no one in the modern world truly understood them. They were dismissed as mystical pictures rather than a structured language. The Rosetta Stone flipped that assumption on its head. By comparing the Greek, which scholars could already read, with the hieroglyphs, linguists, most notably Jean-François Champollion, were able to crack the code. Suddenly, the voices of ancient Egypt weren't silent anymore. Tomb walls, temple inscriptions, funerary texts, all of it could be read. The past came alive. But here's what many people forget. The Rosetta Stone itself wasn't carved as some magical decoder. It was, on the surface, a pretty mundane text. Essentially, it's a decree from 196 BCE, issued during the reign of King Ptolemy V. It praises the young ruler, lists his accomplishments, and outlines tax breaks and benefits granted to priests. In other words, ancient political PR. Nothing about it screams mystery, or so historians thought. Still, the stone held an aura that went beyond its words. To the Egyptians of that time, inscribing messages in multiple scripts wasn't just about accessibility, it was about permanence, legitimacy, and power. A decree carved into stone wasn't just administration, it was communication with eternity. And that's what makes the recent AI revelations so intriguing. If the Rosetta Stone was crafted to echo across ages, is it really so far-fetched that its makers might have embedded meanings that slipped past human readers? Think about it. For centuries, the stone sat in museums as scholars studied and tourists gawked. Yet only now, with machine learning algorithms parsing every symbol, every spacing, and every linguistic quirk, are we realizing there could be more to the message? The Rosetta Stone has always been about translation, but maybe what it was meant to translate wasn't just language. Maybe it was meant to translate a warning. While the stone opened the door to the past, it's today's artificial intelligence that's prying it open wider than ever before, revealing things humans may have missed. The rise of AI in deciphering ancient texts. For centuries, deciphering ancient scripts was a painstaking process reserved for the most dedicated linguists and historians. Every translation depended on sharp human eyes, educated guesses, and years of cross-referencing dusty manuscripts. But in the last decade, something remarkable has changed. Artificial intelligence has stepped into the role of translator, and it's proving to be faster, sharper, and often more insightful than human experts. Take cuneiform tablets, for example. Tens of thousands of them lie in museum basements, written in wedge-shaped characters that hardly anyone alive can read fluently. Recently, machine learning models trained on digital images of these tablets managed to churn out translations in hours, translations that would have taken scholars years. In Israel, AI has been used on the Dead Sea Scrolls, identifying tiny handwriting variations that revealed multiple scribes contributed to what was once thought to be a single author's work. Even Mayan glyphs, long considered stubbornly opaque, are beginning to yield thanks to neural networks spotting patterns humans couldn't. The point is, AI doesn't tire. It doesn't second-guess itself or get lost in personal theories. It sifts through data with relentless precision, catching subtle repetitions or irregularities that humans might brush past. For ancient languages where entire sections are missing, AI can even predict the likely missing words based on linguistic patterns, almost like autofill for lost civilizations. So, what happens when this digital brain is turned on the Rosetta Stone, the most famous linguistic artifact in history? At first, researchers assumed it would just confirm what we already knew, a decree praising Ptolemy V and setting down some priestly perks. But AI doesn't simply read, it analyzes. It looks at the spacing of characters, the frequency of certain words, and even anomalies in the stone's carvings. It noticed patterns no scholar had ever bothered to record. Some hieroglyphs appeared slightly off, as if carved differently by another hand. Certain words lined up in unnatural ways, suggesting intentional layering of meaning. And here's where it gets unsettling. Instead of dismissing these quirks as human error or artistic variation, AI flagged them as statistically significant. In plain terms, it suggested that the stone wasn't just a decree, it was also a code. Think of it like a secret message buried inside a public announcement. To the casual reader, it's all politics and propaganda. To someone who knows where to look or something, in this case, it whispers something much darker. It raises the question, were the ancients deliberately embedding messages for the future, assuming someone would eventually have the tools to uncover them? Or was it more like an accident, a side effect of symbolic language that AI just happened to expose? Either way, the results pushed the Rosetta Stone beyond the realm of archaeology and into something stranger, maybe even dangerous. And when AI dug deeper into those strange patterns, what it uncovered wasn't just academic, it was downright terrifying. The terrifying discovery. When researchers fed high-resolution scans of the Rosetta Stone into AI systems, they expected confirmation of what scholars already knew. Instead, the algorithms started highlighting anomalies, tiny inconsistencies in the hieroglyphs, odd alignments of symbols, and curious repetitions that had never been flagged before. At first, these looked like the usual quirks of ancient carving, but the more the AI dug in, the harder it became to ignore the patterns. They weren't random, they were deliberate. The system detected what it called layered text, meaning that while the decree reads smoothly in Greek and Demotic, certain hieroglyphs seemed to carry additional symbolic meaning when grouped in particular ways. In modern terms, it was as if someone had hidden a second message inside the official one, a message only visible if you knew how to decode the symbols differently. Scholars had overlooked this for centuries because they assumed every script was saying the same thing, but the AI insisted otherwise. What was this hidden text saying? The translations were unsettling. Instead of praising the king and his generosity, the alternative reading carried warnings, cycles of chaos, the wrath of the gods, fire falling from the sky, and rivers turning against man. These weren't vague poetic lines either. They were structured like a prophecy, written in tones eerily familiar to anyone who's read apocalyptic literature. The most disturbing part was that the warnings didn't feel locked in the past. They weren't framed as things that happened long ago. Instead, they were couched in timeless language, almost as if meant for whoever would be able to read them in the future. One line stood out. Those who awaken the voice of stone shall hear what they fear." Chilling words, considering it was AI, our modern awakener, that finally pulled this voice from silence. Skeptics argue it's just coincidence, that AI is overfitting patterns and imposing meaning where none exists. But here's the thing. Ancient Egyptian texts often carried double or triple meanings. Priests and scribes intentionally layered metaphors, symbolism, and hidden knowledge into their inscriptions. They believed sacred texts were not just for common eyes, but also for the initiated, those trained to peel back the outer layer. In that context, a secret message embedded in the Rosetta Stone doesn't sound so far-fetched. As news of the AI's discovery leaked into academic circles, debates grew heated. Was this truly a prophetic warning from an ancient civilization, or was it just a technological misread? Some Egyptologists admitted that even if only half the AI's findings were accurate, it meant historians had underestimated the sophistication of Egyptian scribes. Others, more superstitious, urged caution, suggesting that some texts were never meant to be unearthed. After all, Egypt was a culture obsessed with curses, taboos, and the dangers of knowledge falling into the wrong hands. And here's the twist that left even hardened researchers rattled. The AI didn't just translate, it predicted. Based on linguistic modeling, it generated possible continuations of the text where the stone was damaged or incomplete. These predictions weren't random filler. They echoed themes of plague, famine, floods, and human arrogance leading to downfall. Sound familiar? To many, the parallels with today's crises, climate change, pandemics, political instability were impossible to ignore. The question becomes, was this just a coincidence of language and interpretation? Or did the ancients deliberately encode warnings they believed would resonate in cycles throughout history? Either way, the Rosetta Stone no longer looks like a simple key to the past. Thanks to AI, it now feels like a mirror, one reflecting a terrifying possibility of our future. If the AI's chilling translation sounded familiar, that's because echoes of these same warnings appear again and again in humanity's oldest myths and histories, historical parallels and eerie patterns. One of the most unnerving aspects of the AI's translation is how strangely familiar the warnings sound. Catastrophic floods, fire from the heavens, famine, plague. These aren't just Egyptian anxieties. They're recurring motifs across nearly every ancient civilization, as if humanity has been haunted by the same nightmare for millennia. When you place the Rosetta Stone's supposed hidden text beside other myths and sacred writings, the overlap is almost too close for comfort. Take Egypt itself. Long before the Rosetta Stone was carved, Egyptian myth spoke of the destruction of mankind. In this story, the sun god Ra, enraged by human rebellion, sends the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet to wipe out humanity. She slaughters so mercilessly that blood runs like rivers. Only trickery, filling beer with red dye to make it look like blood, stops her from annihilating the human race completely. Now compare that with the AI's eerie phrases about rivers turning against man and fire from the sky. Coincidence or deliberate echo? Look outward to Mesopotamia, and you'll find the Epic of Gilgamesh, where a great flood nearly erases humanity. Jump to the Hebrew Bible, and the story repeats with Noah. Move to Greek mythology, and you encounter Deucalion and Pyrrha surviving a divine deluge. Across oceans, the ancient Maya warned of cyclical destructions tied to their long count calendar. Even Hindu texts speak of world ages, yugas, ending in fire or flood. Different cultures, different continents, yet the same chilling themes. This repetition raises uncomfortable questions. Were ancient civilizations independently inventing these apocalyptic tales? Or were they recording fragments of collective memory passed down through oral tradition from some forgotten cataclysm? If so, the Rosetta Stone's cryptic warnings might not be prophecy in the mystical sense. They could be reminders of disasters already endured, meant as cautionary tales for the future. But there's another layer. Ancient societies often wrote in veiled language. Myths weren't just stories. They were teaching tools, ways of encoding survival strategies. A flood myth might carry hidden instructions about seasonal changes, agriculture, or migration. A story of divine wrath might actually warn against overpopulation, resource depletion, or warfare. The AI's analysis of the Rosetta Stone could be uncovering not mystical prophecy, but ancient science, knowledge embedded in symbols because plain warnings might not carry the same weight. Still, it's hard to ignore the uncanny timing. The AI's reconstructed phrases about plague, famine, and rivers rising hit a little too close to modern headlines. We've just come through a global pandemic. Climate change is fueling droughts, floods, and wildfires worldwide. Entire regions are bracing for food shortages. The warnings in the stone don't read like distant myth. They read like the evening news. Skeptics point out that humans have a habit of projecting the present onto the past. We look for patterns that confirm our fears, and myths become a convenient mirror. That may be true. But even if these parallels are partly projection, the effect is still powerful. It makes us pause and wonder, what if the ancients weren't just telling stories, but leaving breadcrumbs? What if the Rosetta Stone isn't just a linguistic artifact, but part of a larger chorus of warnings humanity keeps ignoring? Think about it this way. Multiple civilizations, separated by thousands of miles, spoke of destruction by fire and flood. Now, modern scientists warn us of rising seas and increasing wildfires. Different language, same message. The eye may have simply reawakened a truth we've always known deep down, that our survival depends on listening to the echoes of history. The Rosetta Stone's terrifying twist isn't just the words themselves. It's the realization that we've heard them before, and we might be hearing them again too late. Power, politics, and control of ancient secrets. The Rosetta Stone has always been more than just an artifact. It's a prize, a symbol of power. From the moment it was unearthed in 1799, it became a contested object. French soldiers discovered it, but the British seized it after Napoleon's defeat and shipped it to the British Museum, where it remains today. That tug of war wasn't just about archaeology. It was about ownership of the past, and with it, control of the story humanity tells about itself. Now imagine layering artificial intelligence onto that history. If AI has uncovered hidden warnings or coded messages in the stone, who gets to decide what those findings mean and who gets to share them? Already, whispers suggest that not all of the AI's results have been made public. Some scholars worry about sensationalism, while institutions fear backlash if the translations stir panic. After all, it's one thing to display a relic in a glass case. It's another to tell the world that the relic predicts catastrophe. This isn't a new dilemma. Throughout history, access to sacred texts has often been restricted to priests, scribes, or elites. Knowledge was power, and controlling the narrative meant controlling society. Ancient Egypt itself operated on this principle. Hieroglyphs weren't just writing, they were magic, believed to hold divine force. Not everyone was permitted to read or write them. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing the same dynamic play out, except instead of priests and pharaohs, it's governments, corporations, and AI labs deciding what truths the public gets to see. There's also a geopolitical angle. Imagine if AI analysis of the Rosetta Stone, or other ancient artifacts, revealed knowledge that could be interpreted as predictions about natural disasters, disease, or war. Would a superpower treat that information as cultural heritage or as classified intelligence? History shows us that artifacts often become bargaining chips. Just as colonial powers once fought over physical relics, modern powers could fight over their digital secrets. The Rosetta Stone could shift from being a museum exhibit to a tightly guarded file, with translations drip-fed to the public. Then there's the question of belief. If AI's translation confirms themes already echoed in biblical or mythological texts, religious groups might seize on it as validation or challenge it as heresy. A single, hidden line pulled from the stone could ripple into global debates about faith, destiny, and apocalypse. Imagine the political implications if millions believed an ancient prophecy had just been scientifically confirmed. The control of this knowledge becomes a weapon in itself. Who gets to interpret it? Who gets to publish it? Who benefits from spinning the story one way or another? Right now, AI is in the hands of a relatively small group of developers and researchers. That concentration of power means they don't just shape the future of technology, they may also be shaping the way we understand our past. The irony is hard to miss. The Rosetta Stone was once the ultimate democratizer of knowledge, unlocking a language lost for millennia. Now, thanks to AI, it risks becoming the opposite. A text whose most explosive secrets may be locked away by those who fear or desire the power they hold. And beyond politics and secrecy, the real question is what these revelations mean for us, right now, in a world facing crises that sound uncomfortably familiar to the Stone's warnings. What this means for us today. So, what do we do with all this? If AI really uncovered hidden warnings in the Rosetta Stone, then it's not just a quirky historical twist. It's a message aimed squarely at us. The mentions of famine, plague, fire, and rivers rising don't feel abstract anymore. They sound like the world we live in. Floods, wildfires, pandemics, food shortages. What the ancients carved in stone, we're watching unfold on our news feeds. That doesn't mean they were prophets. It means they had lived through collapse before. Failed harvests, toppled cities, spreading diseases, these were their realities. Their myths and warnings weren't fantasy. They were survival guides disguised as sacred stories. And the fact that AI, our most advanced tool, is the one dragging those lessons back into the light. That feels almost deliberate. The real danger isn't whether the stone predicted anything, it's whether we'll listen. Ancient Egypt believed its empire was too strong to fall. So did Rome, so did countless others. We're making the same mistake, convinced our technology makes us invincible. Maybe the Rosetta Stone isn't warning us about gods or curses. Maybe it's warning us about ourselves. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your comments below and subscribe to the channel for more.